Hello everyone, welcome to the return of the Journey of Worth. My apologies for such a long break from the last time that we were together, but Christmas and the New Year and our district assembly and all of the preparation for the year that is before us has filled my time significantly over the last few weeks. And so I recognize that I have had almost finished the series, but not quite. And so I want to this week and perhaps next week do the final two episodes of this Journey of Worth. Today I will conclude the reference to Robin Stockett's book and wrap up the place that he gets to, and that conclusion will in fact lay the foundation for where I want to be next week, which is primarily a reflection on the extent of grace at work in our lives in terms of shame, in response to shame, and then the role of the church, the mission of the church in the context of understanding the power of shame. So, this final section from Robin Stockett's book has a lot to say about that foundation for the next piece. Robin Stockett's book is broken into two sections: one referring to shame, and the other referring to honor. Honor, of course, is the counterpoint to shame, and I would argue that to experience honor is to experience love, that all genuine love is experienced in terms of worth, and honor obviously is a reflection of worth. And so when we look at the idea of honor, which is a biblical concept, and is captured in the idea of glory, we see opening up to us a whole new means of addressing the experience of shame. But as we conclude this section, it's important to recognize that, or at least Robin Stockett addresses the idea of our face. The idea of face, or the face, has an incredible role to play in this recovery from shame. You remember that through this process we've talked about shame being the condition in which we live, and it is a result of the fall. And the separation, the isolation, the disconnection from God leaves us in a state of shame, a condition of shame. The reality is that that idea of shame flows on from the very real emotion of shame. And so just as we have an emotion of guilt and we have a condition of guilt before God, so we have an emotion of shame and a condition of shame. We live in a shamed condition, and that condition of shame is often reflected in our faces. So first of all, let's consider the idea of the idea of the face as it relates to our identity. It's very interesting, isn't it, that we know each other primarily because of our face. If I was to meet you in the street, I would know you when I looked at my face. Have you ever had that experience where you walked up behind a person and you think, I know that person, and as you get close, you get more and more confident that that is in fact the person that you know, and just as you get to them, they turn around and it's not the person that you think it is, because you see their face. And it's not until we see the face that we have final confirmation of a person's identity. And so as we visualize ourselves and as we know ourselves, very often we are reflecting on the way that we look. And in fact, distortions of the face are very often experienced as shaming events. If my face is distorted, then I can feel ashamed of myself. Very interestingly, when we do feel shame, we will often turn our face away from the source of the shame. As an emotion, shame is very much reflected in our faces. And so when we see somebody and their emotion is shame, if that emotion is directed towards us, we will experience as a result of seeing it in their face. And if we see a person experiencing shame, we'll see it on their face, and we'll know that they're experiencing shame, and perhaps we want to reach out to them in empathy and restoration. It is the face that is the primary side of relational connection. We know each other because we see each other's face. Have you ever noticed that when we deal with people in disparaging ideas or constructs, very often we make them faceless. So we talk about groups of people, and they're separated from us by ideology, by race, perhaps by religion or whatever, but or even by politics. But when we're talking about them, we're talking about them as if they are faceless. And so we say, those people are like this. But it's very, very often true that if we get into a one-on-one conversation with a person from a different position that might be a part of one of those faceless groups, we will relate to them very differently than the words we would use to describe that faceless group. The face, the identity, makes for a very different interrelatedness than when they are faceless. So being faceless is a very important part of that disconnect, and disconnection is always an evidence of shame. One of the really powerful concepts that comes out of the psychoanalytic movement, but it's something that we're all fairly familiar with, is this idea of mirroring, and it's seen as a healing capacity when we mirror to somebody else the things that they're experiencing, or the things that they're reflecting in their own emotion. To mirror that back to a person, particularly through our face, is to show empathy, and it's to show consolidation, and it's actually a healing process. It's interesting that what a mother will do with a baby, or what anyone will do with a baby, but it's primarily seen in the mother holding the baby in her arms. She will look in that face, and there will be this interaction of looks, and while the baby will often reflect what's happening in the mother, more often than not, the mother will be mirroring what's happening in the child. That has been shown now time and time again to be a very, very powerful part of identity development. And so this idea of mirroring becomes a very powerful healing concept, and a way of restructuring or renewing identity. So that foreshadows a process that we'll be looking at next week in terms of the role of the church. But when we seek to bring healing into a person's life, it's very, very important that we mirror, we reflect back to them an empathy and an understanding for who they are and what they're experiencing. And that is very often done through the face. One of the powerful concepts then that flows out of that idea is the idea that is so often reflected in scriptures. All the way through, there is the idea of the face of God, or turning our face toward God, or let your face shine upon me. And an example of that is found in Psalm 34, verse 5, where it says, "Those who look at him, those who look with their faces at him, are radiant." So there's this very profound relational piece that happens. Those that look at him are radiant. So as we look at him, there's a relationship established. In that establishment, there is a radiance, and their faces are never covered with shame. So in the relationship with God, there is this mirroring relationship where we get to reflect God and God reflects us. And in that relationship, in that depth of relationship, there is this overcoming of the power of shame. One of the things that's very important to our understanding of salvation is the fact that Christ experienced reality as we experienced him. An interesting question then comes with relationship to shame, particularly as we've unfolded it here in this process, where the condition of shame is the experience of disconnectedness from God, that the distortion of the image of God within us that flows from disconnectedness. One has to rationalize that if Christ was always in a relationship, perfect relationship with God, does he really understand the human condition of shame? And as an emotional being, you would have to say that there were times throughout Jesus' life where he experienced the emotion of shame. And at its most simplest form, shame could be seen as embarrassment. So there's almost no doubt, if Jesus is going to genuinely understood as human, that he experienced the emotion of shame. It's the state of shame that the question comes, did Jesus actually experience? Well, in his appearance on the cross, we hear that cry, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? The key element of shame is isolation, it's disconnection, it's worthlessness that comes from broken relationship. And it's a very clear indication that Jesus experienced the condition of shame there on the cross if he hadn't experienced it before. An important part of the healing power of the cross comes through when Jesus experiences that shame that comes from isolation and disconnection from God. But the wonderful part is that as at the end of his death upon the cross, he declares, into your hands I commit my spirit. And this is a reference to a Psalm 31, to be precise. And Robin Stockett quotes the psalm and reduces it down a little bit so it's manageable. But let me read that psalm for you. In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me into your righteousness. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Redeem me. And that's the part that Jesus quoted, which is a clear identification with this psalm. O Lord, the God of truth, my life is consumed by anguish and my years by groaning. My strength fails because of my affliction, and my bones grow weak because of all my enemies. I am the utter contempt of my neighbors. I am a dread to my friends, both shame words. Those who see me on the street flee from me. There's brokenness, separation, isolation. I am forgotten by them as though I were dead. I have become like broken pottery, for I hear the slander of many, shame. There is terror on every side. They conspire against me, broken relationship, shame, and plot to take my life. But I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. Let your face shine on me, shine on your servant. Save me in your unfailing love. There's that connection of love, unfailing love, with the response to shame. Let me not be put to shame, O Lord, for I have cried out to you, but let the wicked be put to shame and lie silent in the grave. And so when Jesus said, I put I commit into your hands, I commit my spirit, he was referencing that psalm, which is all about the adequate response of love to shame. And so as we wrap up this journey through Robin Stockett's book, it really is an incredibly powerful idea, this idea of shame. And next week I want to show you that a full understanding of God's grace means he responds to the deepest condition of shame, and that response to the deepest condition of shame empowers us to respond to a world of shame, and it redefines the mission of the church and redefines it in terms of embrace and of wholeness and of fullness and of unconditional love and of acceptance. That's what it is to be the church. Talk to you next week.